Hey everyone, happy Sunday. I hope your week was really good. This week the weather was a little bit funky, but it was good. My family went back into the school routine, so it was a lot of waking up early to get school done and getting back into a schedule. But yeah, this week was good and it's the weekend, so yay. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about depth, and I'm going to piggyback on the verse that I read last week, Isaiah 6:8. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper into what that means for all of us. So I'm just going to start by reading the verse, which is, "Then I heard the voice of the Lord asking, 'Who should I send? Who will go for us?' I said, 'Here I am, send me.'" So one of the things that stuck out to me when I first read this passage was Isaiah had zero idea what he was getting into. He did not know what God's plans were. He did not know what God was going to have him do. But even so, he still said, "Here I am, God, send me." Like, I will go even though I don't know what you're planning. And the first thing that came into my mind was, whoa, he's walking in blind. But then when I started to think about it, I would rather switch that word blind out for the word bold, and boldly walking in instead of blindly walking in. Because honestly, when we are walking on the path that God has set out for us, even though sometimes we might not know what we're getting into, Christ is our light, so it's never going to be a blind walk when we are walking with Christ. So instead, I love that Isaiah was so bold in his faith and so bold with this passion that he has to just go all in for Christ, instead of making sure that he was okay with God wanted him to do before he got into it. So one of the words, actually it's one of my favorite words now. I was listening to a sermon by Sadie Robertson, and she brought up the word Hineni, which is Hebrew. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, gotta be honest, but it's Hineni. So you can look it up and look up the pronunciation, because I'm probably not saying it right. But it is the Hebrew word for giving 100% of yourself to Christ. And it's the Hebrew word for "here I am, send me," but in a deeper sense of, "Here I am, do whatever you want with me." And that's what we see here with Isaiah, is he's saying, like, "Here I am, God, I don't care what you have in store. I will do it, no questions asked." And that's really what Christ is calling us to do as Christians, is to go to him and just say, "God, here I am. Here is all of me, and I'm going to do what you want me to do, no questions asked." So yeah, I really love that word, and I really love this passage and the symbolism in just being so ready for Christ and so ready for Christ's mission. So then we get into the depth aspect of it. So one of the definitions for depth is extreme or intense, and that I kind of, at both the definition of depth and the definition of deep, which I will get into in a little bit, I kind of laughed out loud, because when you're thinking about depth in a Christian standpoint, for the word depth to mean extreme or intense, I think of it as we are going into this mission for Christ, and it is an extreme mission. It's an intense mission, and it's something that we have been so clearly called to be a part of as Christians, and it's not going to be easy. And Jesus tells us that. He says, coming after me and following after what I want you to do is not going to be easy, but it's worth it. And that's what I think of when I think of the word depth and the word intense and extreme, is it may be difficult, but it's worth it in the end, and it is rewarding, So one of the questions that I want to ask is, how deep are you willing to go for Christ's mission? So the word deep, actually, one of the definitions for deep means abstract or difficult to understand. And when I let that sink in a little bit, I started thinking about how when we are called to Christ's mission, we don't always understand. For example, right now, the camp that I work at over the summer just sent out the notification that where the location that I'm supposed to be working at this summer is going to be closed. So I moved to another location, and when I first heard that news, I don't understand why Christ is doing this, and I don't understand why God is shutting down the place that I felt so called to go to. But that's part of being so ready for Christ, is we're not always going to understand. It's not a promise. God doesn't promise us that everything is going to make sense. And he doesn't promise us that everything will all be put together in our heads. And, sometimes I'm honestly thankful for that, because if I follow after the plan that makes sense to me, it's not always as rewarding and it's not always as meaningful as the plan that makes sense to Christ. And luckily, we don't need to understand, and we don't need to have a full understanding of what Christ is doing, because we have this thing called trust in Christ. And that's what Isaiah did when he put his life into Christ's hands and said, "Here I am, send me." He fully trusted in God's purpose and what God had planned for him, that he didn't need to understand what God was doing. He just said, "Okay, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm trusting you to bring me to where you need me and to use me how you want to use me." So then we think about the story of Peter walking on water, and I think this is such a common story that I've heard since I was a kid, and it's just one of those that is heard so often that we forget the meaning of it. Peter, when he saw Christ, he called out to him and said, "If you're really Jesus, then have me come out to you." And in the middle of the ocean, in this boat that gives Peter so much safety and physical comfort, Peter was so ready to jump out into the waters to run towards Christ. And he was all of his friends were probably like, "You're crazy. Like, this is insane. Stay in the boat. Be safe with us. Like, how do you know that you're not going to jump out and sink?" And we are going to hear that our entire lives. You are going to hear people telling you you're crazy. What do you mean you're going to go do X, Y, and Z? How do you know that that's even going to work out for you? But for Peter, it worked out pretty well. He started walking on water when he fully trusted Christ and kept his eyes on the Lord and what the Lord was calling him to do. He was able to do incredible things. That was a miracle that Jesus performed with Peter. And he was running towards Christ. And I think one of the things that we forget is when we are walking into a scary situation, well, not scary, but when Christ calls you to do something that you are like, "I'm not really sure that I can do this," when you keep your eyes on Christ, everything becomes clearer. That doesn't mean that you're going to understand, but everything is clear. Peter, when he took his eyes off of Christ and looked down at the depth of unknown underneath him, that's when he started sinking. And that kind of hit me a little bit. And I was like, wow. So when we start going deep and running after Christ, when we turn back and start listening to all these people that are saying, "What are you doing? You're crazy. How do you know this is going to work?" And when we start looking down at how far out we've become and we take our eyes off of Christ, our feet will fail us. And I love the quote from the song Oceans, "Where feet may fail, but my faith will stand." And this so accurately represents what we're talking about, in the sense of when we are out in the depth with Christ, our feet and our trust in ourselves and what we have, this comfort in doing what we feel is best for us, that is going to fail. Our feet, where we have positioned our own feet and our physical bodies, it's going to fail when we're out deep. But our faith in Christ, when we keep our eyes on Jesus, that's when we're going to stand. And that is when we're going to succeed in what Jesus is calling us to do. Jesus, when he called Peter out, Peter only sank when he took his eyes off of Christ. So Jesus has so many incredible things in store for us that we can't even comprehend. These things are deeper into faith and love and peace and hope than we can ever fully comprehend. But if our eyes aren't fixed on Jesus, and if our hearts aren't fixed on being readily available for him to use us in the mission that he's called to use us in, we're never going to be able to experience what he has in store. If we aren't like Isaiah and say, God, here I am, send me wherever you need, whenever you need me, I am readily available for you 110% of the time, we're going to miss out. We're going to miss out on all of the incredible things that God is doing. I mean, look at it right now. Look at how many people are coming to Christ because of this pandemic. If our eyes are fixed on all of the wrong that's going on and all of the stores that are closed and all of the times that we're missing out on our friends, if our eyes are fixed on that, we miss the bigger picture. We miss what God is doing. We miss all of the beautiful things that Christ is doing in our nation, in our country, and in our world right now. So I just encourage you, fix your eyes on Christ. You know, how deep are you willing to go in order to see Christ work in you and in the people around you? Because the deeper you go, the more evident it is that Christ is working and that Christ is doing good things. So yeah, I encourage you to think about that and pray about it, and text me if you have questions. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.